Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today let's talk about the recent proposal of decriminalizing check bouncing and understand what would change if this law was decriminalized. And I know that this is a topic that evokes passionate debate and divided opinions, yet I think it's important to review what this law was sought to achieve and whether it has indeed been achieved. But before I start, I urge every one of you to smash that like button and hit the subscription button. So let's get started now. Firstly, let's understand what check bouncing really means. You see, a bounce check is slang for a check that cannot be processed because the account holder has non-sufficient funds available for use. But here's the problem. You need to understand check bouncing is handled very differently in India and the rest of the world. Here in India, check bouncing is criminalized under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act, whereas most of the civilized world has done away with the idea of sending people to prison due to the failure to repay their contractual debts. Let me walk you with some history here. The United Kingdom prohibited imprisoning people for the failure to repay their debts in 1869. The United States banned debtors' prison as far back as 1833. Their idea for abolishing debtors' prison is that society has nothing to gain by imprisoning a person who cannot pay their debts even after all of their assets have been possessed by their creditors. It is simply better for such person to engage in productive activity in the society and pay back their debts to their creditors. Now, don't get the wrong idea and think that these countries have very lenient policies. It's just that these transgressions are stated as civil offense, not criminal offense, where you do get penalized and then left alone. But in India, this law was incorporated with Section 138 in the late 1988, and it was done with an Indian twist. As if criminalization was not enough, the amendment put the offense on par with most dreaded offenses. Well, you could say that the then finance minister S.B. Chauhan justified the criminalization of the offences in the parliament to inculcate faith in the banking operations, enhance credibility in transacting businesses, and popularize acceptance of checks. But since then, huge amount of cases have been filed in the criminal courts. According to the 213th Law Commission report, there are about 40 lakh check bounces cases pending today. Now that's a lot of cases. Why such enormous volume, if you ask? Firstly, it's because how this law is framed. You see, for this kind of offense in India, the state law enforcement agencies play no part in investigating or prosecuting the accused. It is up to you to prove your case. So what happened over the years is that this law has come to be used primarily by bankers and landlords to threaten common people with criminal liabilities for breach of contracts. So typically what happens is a banking company or a landlord will take post-repayment checks at the time of giving out loans. Now, farmers at the receiving end of such filed cases are unable to pay the money back and often end up in jail. And secondly, the pending cases are pending due to the absence of the accused. According to one study, it takes 2 years to 15 years just to dispose a case, and that's a lot of time to dispose a single case. That criminalizing this offense hasn't helped solving problems that it was set to achieve. And since it's not aiding the redressal process in any meaningful way, the government thinks it ought to decriminalize the offense altogether. But not everyone thinks like that. Decriminalization could also be prudent. Everyone's favorite reason for why criminalization of check bounce should continue is that it safeguards bankers and non-bank finance companies. And since jail time is pretty good deterrent, these institutions still rely on post-dated checks because it provides a safety margin like no other. Nobody likes to be tagged as a criminal, so there's an aspect of obligation to pay back which comes from the post-dated checks, or you could potentially land in jail. So I'll leave the decision to support or oppose to decriminalize this act in your hands. Leave a comment sharing your views. As for my view on this case, I believe as a civilized society, we should move from the Dickensian ideals of workhouses and debtors' prison. where he did much to mold public opinion in favor of abolition of individual being imprisoned for defaulting on repayment of debt. The law we have is pretty outdated, and it also violates the UN's International Bill of Human Rights, which we are a part of. The bill explicitly states that the right to liberty includes the prohibition of imprisonment as punishment for breach of contract, which presumably extends to check bounce. Section 138 has too many loopholes that require restructuring. The fact that creditors can exercise too much power over the lenders, in essence, if a person defaults on repayments, criminal proceedings can immediately be started, makes it extremely difficult for debtors to contest proceedings, noting that defaulters who are fraudsters, cheats, or swindlers are a very different class deserving prosecution under applicable criminal statutes by law enforcement. A normal farmer who fails to repay his debts should not be penalized the same way like criminals. The issue here can be debated with divided opinions, and that is why I'd like to hear your opinions on this issue. Leave a comment if you'd like to voice your opinion. So this was all about the check bouncing in India. If you like my content, please do hit the like and subscription button down below. I'll come up with more content. Until next time, bye.